That annoying sound when you got your stereo on, you rev up the engine, you get that wonderful whine that follows the engine. That is caused by a ground issue. It's often called ground loop noise or alternator whine. You name it, it makes the sound. Whenever you rev the engine up, the pitch goes up. That is caused by a ground issue. There are a handful of ways to fix that problem. But ultimately, what I've found works the best is to run a power and a ground wire from where your amplifier is all the way to the front of the car and use that to power your stereo. You see, whenever you have the ground, or use the ground from the stereo, the factory ground, and then the aftermarket stereo, hook those two together, you end up with a ground point that goes through a whole lot of different things and goes by a lot of stuff. And that ground, that stereo may have something that cleans it, the original factory one, but the aftermarket one may not. For whatever reason, you end up with noise. It doesn't always happen. But as a practice, the way to solve that problem before it happens is to always run a power and a ground from your distribution center for your big amplifiers to the stereo. Just run it. You already got to run a power wire from the engine back. So while you're doing that, go ahead and run a power and a ground, a small power and a ground with it, and right up there under this behind the stereo. Just hook that up to your stereo. Go back here and back there. That way you don't have problems with the ground loop. And you also have a known power source for your stereo. It eliminates a lot of other wiring hassles later, because you know that this wire is definitely getting hot and definitely getting ground from this definite spot. And later on, not only will that kill ground loop issues, but it'll also enable you to do different things with your stereo that would have been tricky using the car's power source. All right, so what if the noise is a constant noise? The pitch doesn't change when you rev up your engine. Most likely, that's going to be an RCA issue. Check your RCA connections. If they're good, try wiggling the RCA female on your amplifier, wiggling the RCA female on the back of the stereo. If any of that moves around, that could be a problem. It could be a bad connection on the plugs, could be a bad connection on the wires, it could be a bad wire. But usually that constant buzzy kind of sound that just constantly goes, that's the thing. That's what it is. And often other times what it'll do is it'll work perfectly, and then someday it'll just not work. It'll just sound all buzzy and crappy, and the next day it'll work fine. It may change with temperatures. It may change when the car is cold versus whenever it's warmed up. All of these things will affect how the metallurgy work and the connection and cause it to go bad or not, connect and not connect. Chasing that down can be a real pain, but it's an RCA or a signal path connection somewhere. It's almost never a ground issue. It's usually an RCA issue of some kind. Another thing that can happen in that same field is if you got a small piece of equipment with a bad ground, that piece of equipment can actually get a ground through the RCA. And as you can guess, that'll cause noise. So if the ground wire it's connected to, the ground it's connected to isn't a good ground, it can actually pull the ground through that. I've seen stereos pull the ground through antennas also. So you got your antenna plugged in, but the ground wire is no good or isn't even connected. The radio comes on, but it sounds funny. It does weird things. It's because it's pulling the ground through the antenna. Yeah, a lot of times, again, ground issues. But you can pull, the equipment can pull ground through a lot of things. And if it's pulling, the right equipment pulls the ground through something that's not supposed to, and it's a powerful piece of equipment, it'll blow it instantly. So check your grounds, check your RCAs, check your RCA connections, check the RCA females, check all that stuff. That's where that constant sound is going to be coming from, one of those places. Now, another location where you could get noise, and it's going to be noise floor issues. So if you have a low hum coming from like a deeper hum, check your subwoofer amplifier. Turn the gain down some on your subwoofer amplifier. And if you have a piece of equipment in between the stereo and the amplifier, or if your stereo has an output section where it can change the sub level in the stereo, turn that up, turn the gain on the amp down. So in other words, you want to put a hotter signal to the amplifier and turn the gain down, you'll get rid of that. If the noise is more of a high-pitched sound, then check your mids and highs amp. Same issue. Turn the gains down, turn the level up going into it. So you get the same sound, but not the gain isn't as high. If you're getting that constant, pretty loud noise floor like that, gain's too hot on your amplifier. Also, you want to check your RCAs. Anywhere in your signal path, make sure that your signal wires, RCAs, aren't running alongside, grouped up with, balled up with, twisted up with power wires or other sources of a lot of magnetic interference. So if you've got a big old power wire or even a big ground wire coming from your amplifier and your RCAs are running a lot alongside of it, whenever a lot of power goes through that, it creates a magnetic field around it. And if that wire is going through there, it's going to pick up that magnetic interference, carry it straight to the amplifier, and the amplifier is going to amplify whatever that was. And that's where you're getting your sound. It may not be a big signal, but the amplifier is amplifying it. So even though the music will be louder, you'll still be able to hear that. And that can also create a nasty sound on a noise floor. So making sure if you're crossing power wires, try to cross them like this, not like this. If you got to go, or just try to go like that. And balling up your RCAs is usually a bad recipe for disaster. If you have an RCA that's too long, well, get a shorter RCA. If you don't have that option, then make nice long folds back and forth. So you're using as the minimal amount of grouping. Nice long folds, and then make sure they're not running next to any power wires, any computers, the amplifier, anything where they're right up against an electronic device. Because anytime you can concentrate all that wire in an area and then you put some source of interference right on top of it, you're asking for noise. That's how noise happens. And another weird one is to check your antenna connection. Even if you don't use the radio, if you have an antenna connection, try connecting the antenna. If it's making noise and you don't use the radio, try disconnecting the antenna. There's also devices you can put between the antenna connection on your radio and your actual antenna, and they will reduce noise. There's also noise filters you can use in the power wire going to your radio. I don't recommend using those, but it may be the only thing that seems to work. It usually reduces your frequency range of your system and overall does bad things to your sound, and it usually doesn't really work that good either. Putting your power and ground wires together with your amp's power and ground, it's probably going to sort you right out. Make sure all your connections are tight, rust-free, and paint-free. Good metal contact. Got that lock washer on there so they bolt down good and tight, and there's nothing shorting, sparking, arcing, anything like that. All those things create noise. That's how lightning works. In case you guys didn't know, that's what the sound of thunder comes from. Lightning strike, thunder. It makes that noise because it is jumping a gap from the cloud to the ground. That crack, that lightning bolt, is an arc. The same thing as an arc welder. Makes that buzzy sound. The same thing happens if you've got a ground that's loose and you got a little spark jumping from the ground lead to the ground surf back and forth. that creates noise. And then guess what happens? That noise gets picked up by your line level inputs and amplified through the amplifier. And you've got this noise and you can't figure out where it's at. It's one little tiny thing sparking somewhere. It is what it is. I've made all the same mistakes. How do you think I learned anything? I had to run my head into the wall over and over and over again. And eventually something stuck, and it stuck in here. And I learned. And I'm hard-headed. But I do learn. And I try to package that information and pass it on to you guys. A really good source for it, by the way. If you guys are having trouble chasing down these issues and my advice didn't help you in your particular case, head on over to crutchfield.com. I've got a link down below to a page where they actually go through the process of helping you diagnose electrical issues, noise-related electrical issues, and they have a lot more in-depth advice than what I'm giving you. What I'm telling you now is a summary. The details are there. And there's a couple other good write-ups as well. You can look over to car audio fabrication channel, and he has some really good write-ups and some really good video information on chasing down engine noises as well. Mark's a smart guy. He's been at it for a long time. And my brain, by the way, my brain is all over the place tonight. I've tried to shoot this video like 6 times, and it's not going to come out sounding intelligent or anything, so I apologize. I just can't. There's short circuit, things are broken, and yeah, things happened. So I'm doing my best, and hopefully this is understandable. I'm just going to eat some more crackers and call it good. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's just how it's going to be tonight. If you guys found this helpful, or if you just feel sorry for my dumb ass, please hit the subscribe button and push me over 1,000. And if you're watching this 10 years in the future and I've got like 50,000 subscribers, then yay. Heck yeah, man. But right now we're struggling to hit that 1K mark. Anyway, guys, I appreciate all my subscribers. I appreciate my patrons. I appreciate my members. People are signing up. You guys are really, really, really making me feel good about this whole operation and giving me a lot to work with every day, because my days are pretty depressing. Anyway, peace, guys.